I think somehow that seems to be missed, and the whole discussion, it's kind of ironic that the whole discussion last week was about Britain's together and Britain's united and Britain's helped the world and Britain's good for everybody and all the wonderful things that Britain's ever done. And within a week we start dropping bombs on other human beings elsewhere in the world with the justification that we're stopping barbarism. But I just read a minute ago that it's quite widely accepted, of course, or it's universally accepted, that the people who we're aiming to bomb and the real people who we're horrified by are British people, cutting British and American people's heads off. And so I asked myself about this alienation. You know, what's this alienation about? Why do we have to go to Iraq to bomb people? And what's the internal contradiction in society that's leading to these contradictions, which I think it's not the same contradiction, but fundamentally there is a contradiction of alienation which leads to the Scottish vote and which leads to the beheading of people in Iraq and Syria. And of course then there's all the contradictions of the Iraqi war in the past and the war against so-called terror that they've run for 13 years and more, and this international military action that they've been taking, various countries been taking recently.
What do you mean by so-called terror? People get their heads chopped off, that's not so-called terror, that's real terror.
Well, it's not always terror to chop someone's head off.
Well, that's Sunday afternoon pastime.
Well, we used to do it here in Hyde Park, hang people, cut their bodies. Sorry? Last year there was someone had their head chopped off on the street, or they tried to chop someone's head off. Well,
who do you represent?
Myself mainly, but I have a viewpoint that I propound, which you may or may not agree with, but I think I'll try and explain what I think first, before you prejudge me by a label, just as you've judged me by my statement about terror. I said well,
it's a stupid thing to say.
I don't think it's a stupid thing to say, because if we drop bombs on Iraq, is that terror?
Yes, of course it is, but we're talking about so-called terror.
Well, the British government and mainstream public opinion at the moment doesn't believe that British bombing of Iraq is terror. So when I say so-called, you are also saying the same thing. Because if you're saying, as you just did a second ago, you said that British bombing of Iraq is terror,
yes, of course
then you say of course, you're saying of course it is. Yes. So when I say so-called terror, you said I was wrong. But when you say so-called terror, in other words, or when you say
Iraq is wrong, it's terror.
It's terror, okay.
Terror in London is terror, and terror anywhere. 9/11, 7/7 in London was terror.
But I mean,
so-called terror.
But
it was terror.
You said to me that this is basically not a disputed term, right?
It's terror.
In your mind, terror is the use of violence to achieve objectives, right?
Yes, right.
But that's not the general public perception of terror.
Okay, that's why you're here.
So that's why I used the word so-called terror. Well, is a war terror?
Well, it depends. Let's not get into that. Let's talk about today and bombing Iraq, okay? You're against it, I'm against it. Bombing Iraq is wrong. It's not going to achieve anything worthwhile, okay? Off you go.
Okay. I think that last week we saw there was an election or a vote in Britain about independence of Scotland. And there were 45% of the population in Scotland, or the electorate, who believed that Scotland should be completely independent from Britain. A couple of days before that, the politicians of Westminster, Cameron Clegg, Gordon Brown, and Ed Miliband, they all united together to claim all the wonders, or assert all the wonders of what Britain stands for. The United Kingdom. Gordon Brown, for example, said the United Kingdom was the first nation to unite and to spread that unity with the objectives, for example, of establishing a better world all around the world. That was the argument made by Gordon Brown, a keynote address, one night before the vote was taken last week. One night before. And he made a big point out of it. It was put on the news, put on the BBC, major speech as to why Scotland shouldn't be independent. Britain had served to unify the world and help the people of the world. That was the argument. Now it is 8 days on, 9 days on since the election, since the vote in Scotland. And on the 7th day, just like God, David Cameron and the British Parliament in Westminster decided that they would go and authorise, by 540 something votes to 40 something, authorise the bombing of Iraq. And most people in Britain have come round to the opinion that we should be bombing Iraq. We should be bombing Iraq because here is the situation: barbaric, monstrous, horrific Facebook videos of British, innocent British and innocent American journalists and aid workers who went to the region to help the people, having their head removed from their body by a knife, by a man telling you that you have to leave the region and stop fighting the people and allow the people of the region to establish an Islamic state. That's the background to the bombing campaign that's been organised by the British. Of course,
it's been organised by the Americans. We're just joining in. Okay?
Is that correct? I don't think that's quite correct, my friend. That's your opinion. The gentleman is saying that the campaign is organised by the Americans. And we are just joining in. That's what he's saying.
The Caliphate is an Arab problem. The Arabs should solve it. They should put some boots on the ground and sort themselves out, and we should give them some intelligent support.
Who's we?
Anyone in the West, okay?
Who's the West?
American and us, okay? We should not be bombing, you're quite right.
Are we bound together to America?
No, we're not.
By some umbilical cord?
We are, no, don't be silly. It's an Arab problem. Arabs should put boots on...
Who are the Arabs, my friend?
The Middle East, for God's sake, eh?
Middle East.
It's Saudi Arabia.
Are Iraqis Arabs? Are Iranians Arabs?
No, they're Arabs and Persian, you know that, okay?
Sorry?
The Iranians are Persian, not Arab, okay?
So Iran's not involved
don't play with words. The people in the Middle East...
You use the word Arab.
The Muslims in the Middle East, I'm talking about Muslims, have got a problem in the Middle East. It's their problem. They should put boots on the ground and solve it. Not us. We shouldn't be bombing. I quite agree with you.
Boots on the ground to serve what?
Eh?
To do what?
They should sort out if they don't want a caliphate, they should do something about it. Okay? It's their problem, not ours. It's the Middle East problem, a Muslim problem.
Okay, you were saying it's a Middle East problem and a Muslim problem. I don't think the two are quite the same thing. After all, there are Muslims in London. There are Muslims in this meeting here.
Well, don't be silly with words. It's a Middle East problem, but for Muslims. The Muslims have created the problem because they're idiots, okay?
The Muslims are idiots,
yes,
are they?
they are. They're religious fanatics. And
all of them?
Yes, I don't like Muslims.
Do you know any that aren't?
Yeah, listen, let's get... sorry, forget Muslims. I don't want to start a new argument.
No,
I want to talk about this, okay? It's the Middle East...
It's the have a platform.
It's the Middle East Muslim problem. They ought to sort it out, and we should not be bombing.
Sir, do you not like Muslims?
Let me ask you this. It seemed to me, and I think everyone's accepted this, that the person who chopped the head off with a knife of at least two of the people was a British guy.
Yes, he'd been radicalised.
Right, so, in other words, a British guy... Sorry? What? Well, of course it's staged. Of course it's staged.
When you film something, it's staged.
We have the conspiracy theory here. Nothing. Go ahead and say it. Go ahead and say it. But don't expect me to espouse what you're saying. You're perfectly free to say what you're saying, and you've said it. I'm free to disagree with you, right or not.
I disagree too. There's no CI
When
conspiracy.
you say, conspiracy theory.
It's actually staged or faked.
I don't think anyone's denying that there is this staged event. The question is, who is staging it and for what purposes? The gentleman here is arguing that it was staged by the CIA. That's his point of view. He has no evidence for it, but he's arguing it. It may be. I don't know. I doubt it. However, the mainstream argument given by the government and by the mass media and accepted by the general population who are backing the bombing of Iraq and possibly of Syria is that this was a British guy cutting the head off an American in Iraq.
I know him.
That's the mainstream argument. Now,
he's a freestyle rapper.
Now,
I fucking know John. You'll stitch up, mate. Go
well,
on.
okay. Now,
I fucking know him, yeah?
take you. Oh, no.
He's a freestyle MC.
So, given the fact that the mainstream argument is that the man who's responsible for turning public opinion in favour of bombing is a British guy who went to Iraq alongside with thousands of others from Britain, Germany, France, America,
Australia,
European countries, estimated to be around 3,000 people out of an army of maximum 10,000 coming from the West. The weapons they have, other than the knives, of course, knives you can buy in shops all down the street here.
Have you got a list of their names?
The weapons they've got,
AK-47.
the modern weapons, the AK-47s, the aircraft, the anti-tank missiles, the smart bombs and so on.
No, nothing else.
Where did they come from?
They just got fucking grit and a fucking shovel.
They came from seizing.
B-52s on their fucking head. Sorry, sir. Continue. Sorry, sir. I'm insulting you, mate.
They came from American bases, support or American-backed military forces of the Iraqi army, which the Americans have trained for more than 10 years. More than 10 years since the American invasion of Iraq. They trained, armed and organised an army of the Iraqi army, 600,000 strong. In fact, more than 1.5 million strong if you count all their reserve forces. Yet this army, quite right, a complete and utter waste of money.
By the kind-hearted
It's
Americans.
not worth it. They're fighting for the fucking enemy. They don't want to fucking fight. When they go out, £100 ain't worth them walking down the road and getting fucking blown up by the people who know what's fucking going on. Right? Now, Al-Qaeda, ISIS is the same insurgent battle that Al-Qaeda is. And you have to remember, America did create them in 1979. They created the fucking base. When George Bush refers to my base, he's actually fucking mocking the 9/11 victims, yeah? Because his dad's actually fucking created the base. It's Al-Qaeda. Sorry, mate. I'm fucking... Hang on a minute. I'm fucking...
Very well said,
I'm a
sir.
cockney.
He's very rude and immature.
Alright, sorry, sir. I didn't know. I thought he was speaking school.
It is. I'm just telling
So
you.
I could be Bobby Bleep.
You'd like, yeah, you could, but
Bobby
is it what
Bleep.
you want?
Well, I'm a freestyle MC. Hello, sorry, sir. You do look like Chapman Pincer. You look like you was MI5 or something. Hello. Sorry, I thought we was allowed to swear. Okay, I'm going to go away, sir. I will go away, sir, alright? See you later, alright? Because I respect my elders. Tell her. Hello, alright? See you later, sir. Tell him the truth. He's reasonable. That's why I'm being reasonable.
It's quite right. We shouldn't be bombing Iraq.
So,
all right.
but let's start from where we're at. At the moment, according to opinion polls, the majority of British people support the bombing.
Correct.
So, starting from that standpoint, I have to go through fundamentals about the background and the circumstances so that we can try at least to see how much we can shift opinion within a single meeting and possibly over society over the next few months, because David Cameron has been talking about many years campaign.
Yes.
So we're talking about last week with the big vote last few days, the big vote in favour of war.
Hang on, how long has
What we're
America
talking
been
about-
bombing? In that
Yes, but that's America.
we're late to the party anyway, it doesn't matter.
According to some people, the gentleman here, for example, the Americans are leading the campaign. I don't think that's the case.
They are the campaign.
I don't think that's the case.
We're the tail on
I
this.
think we are seeing circumstances, funnily enough, on the anniversary of 100 years. Circumstances quite similar to what happened in 1914. Because here we have one country after another fighting for their interests on a world scale, to divide up the loot of the Middle East. As the US empire declines and loses its global dominance, as China is outstripping America this year, there is a world shift in the balance of forces of a world historic significance. Sorry? I'm not discussing good or bad. I'm discussing reality.
Dominance.
What is the world balance of forces that is leading to this type of conflict?
So it's power politics for oil.
Power politics of oil is one component.
Okay.
But of course, what you argued a few minutes ago was that this power politics of oil was still dominated by American global hegemony. I do not believe that is the case anymore.
I didn't say it was dominated by hegemony.
You said the Americans are deciding what we do.
They were the leader of the pack, okay?
Well, they may have been
yes,
the
you're right,
leader of the
sir.
pack.
You're right.
But no
They
one
are.
seriously thinks, after 11 years since the first bombings, or better said, the first of the second Iraq war, in recent times that is,
Yeah, not counting 100 years.